Imagine a queen walking through a crowded market, dressed as a humble baker's wife, a war hero slipping past enemy lines disguised as a street musician, or a genius scholar hiding in plain sight beneath the rags of a beggar. History is full of those who vanished behind masks and false names. Tonight, you'll uncover the untold stories of the world's greatest masters of disguise and the secrets they carried beneath their borrowed faces. Picture Jeanne d'Arc in her father's fields, hearing voices that whispered of destiny. She transformed herself from village girl to warrior, donning men's clothing and armor. For months, she maintained this disguise so perfectly that nobles believed God had sent them a male champion. Her voice deepened with authority, her stride lengthened with purpose. The soft clank of chain mail, the whispered prayers in castle corridors, the crackle of banners unfurling in morning mist. She liberated Orléans while disguised as the very thing women were forbidden to be, a soldier of God. Here's the gentle irony. When her enemies finally captured her, they condemned her not for heresy, but for wearing men's clothes. The disguise that saved France became the evidence that condemned its savior. What voices whisper courage to us when the world says we cannot be who we dream to become? Hey friends, if you're enjoying these quiet journeys through time, consider subscribing for more bedtime histories. Now close your eyes and drift to ancient Egypt, where a queen ruled as king for 22 peaceful years. Hatshepsut bound her breasts, donned the traditional pharaoh's false beard, and governed Egypt disguised as a man. She commissioned magnificent temples, established trade routes to mysterious Punt, and brought prosperity while male relatives waited for her to step aside. The gentle lapping of Nile waters against reed boats, the soft scrape of chisels on limestone, the whispered chants of priests in temple shadows. She built monuments that still touch the sky, all while maintaining the most audacious disguise in royal history. The beautiful truth. She was so successful that later pharaohs tried to erase her name from monuments. But stone remembers what men forget, and today we know she was one of Egypt's greatest rulers. How many crowns have been worn by those deemed unworthy to wear them? You're drifting deeper now into 17th century France, where a woman masqueraded as a man to duel, sing opera, and rescue her lover from a convent by setting it ablaze. Julie d'Aubigny cut her hair, bound her chest, and lived openly as a male duelist and opera singer. She fought men in the streets of Paris, seduced women in drawing rooms, and when her female lover was forced into a convent, Julie disguised herself as a nun, started a fire as distraction, and spirited her away into the night. The silver ring of rapiers in moonlit courtyards, the rustle of silk gowns hiding leather boots, the haunting arias echoing through opera house galleries. She lived authentically in a world that demanded deception, turning disguise into liberation. The gentle scandal. King Louis XIV personally pardoned her crimes because her talent transcended her audacity. She died young but lived more fully than most who reach old age. What freedoms might we discover if we dared to wear the masks that reveal our truest selves? You're floating now to colonial Spain, where a young nun escaped her convent, transformed herself into a soldier, and conquered the New World while everyone believed she was a man. Catalina fled her convent at 15, cut her hair, bound her breasts, and enlisted as a conquistador. For 20 years, she fought battles in Peru and Chile, killed men in duels, and rose through military ranks while maintaining her masculine disguise with remarkable skill. The soft shuffle of sandaled feet on monastery stones, the distant clash of steel on steel, the whispered prayers in languages both old and new. She navigated 2 worlds, the sacred feminine she abandoned and the violent masculine she adopted. Here's the gentle miracle. When she finally revealed her identity, the Pope blessed her, the King of Spain granted her a pension, and history remembers her as both saint and sinner. How many of us are living in the wrong story, waiting for courage to rewrite our lives? You're resting now in colonial Massachusetts, where a young woman disguised herself as a man named Robert Shirtliff and fought in the Revolutionary War for over a year. Deborah bound her breasts, deepened her voice, and enlisted in the Continental Army. She endured the brutal winter at Valley Forge, fought in multiple battles, and was wounded twice, treating her own injuries in secret to protect her identity from army doctors. The crunch of snow under worn boots, the crackle of campfires in frozen valleys, the gentle murmur of soldiers sharing stories of home. She carried musket and hope equally, fighting for a freedom she couldn't fully claim as a woman. The tender irony, after the war, she toured the country giving lectures about her experiences, finally able to speak her truth in her own voice. What battles are we fighting in disguise, hoping someday to claim victory in our own names? You're drifting now to 1960s Beijing, where a Chinese opera singer convinced a French diplomat he was a woman for 20 years, becoming one of history's most successful spies. Shapei Pu, a male opera performer trained in female roles, seduced French attaché Bernard Boursicot while disguised as a woman. For 2 decades, he maintained this deception, claiming Chinese modesty prevented intimate encounters, while passing French secrets to Chinese intelligence. The delicate rustle of silk costumes, the haunting melodies of Peking opera, the soft whispers of political intrigue in embassy corridors. Love and espionage intertwined like silk threads, creating a tapestry of deception that spanned continents. The gentle tragedy. When their affair was exposed, both men were imprisoned. But Boursicot claimed he never realized his lover was male, believing love had simply made him blind to obvious truths. What do we choose not to see when seeing would shatter the stories we tell ourselves? You're settling deeper into your pillows now, traveling to 1915 Serbia, where an English secretary disguised herself as a man and became the only woman officially enrolled in the Serbian army. Flora Sandes initially went to Serbia as a Red Cross nurse, but when the army retreated through Albania, she disguised herself as a male soldier to continue fighting. She cut her hair, bound her chest, and fought alongside Serbian troops for years, rising to the rank of captain. The soft crunch of autumn leaves under military boots, the distant echo of church bells across mountain valleys, the gentle camaraderie of soldiers sharing cigarettes by firelight. She found family among men who never questioned her masculine disguise. The beautiful truth. Serbia officially recognized her service, making her the only woman to hold military rank in their army. She married a Russian officer after the war and lived quietly, her warrior days a gentle secret. How many of us have found our truest calling in the places we were never supposed to be? You're floating now on Caribbean waters, where a woman lived her entire life disguised as men. First as her deceased brother, then as a pirate who terrorized the high seas. Mary's mother dressed her as her dead brother to collect inheritance money. Then Mary continued the deception into adulthood. She served in the British military as a man, then turned pirate, joining Calico Jack's crew where she met Anne Bonny, another woman disguised as a male pirate. The gentle lap of waves against wooden hulls, the soft creak of ships' rigging in tropical winds, the whispered songs of sailors under star-filled skies. 2 women lived as men among the freest and most lawless society of their age. The tender irony, when captured, both women pleated their bellies, revealing pregnancies that saved them from execution when their male identities could not. What freedoms have we sacrificed to maintain the masks others expect us to wear? You're resting now in 1950s New York, where a young woman cut her hair, bound her chest, and won a judo tournament disguised as a man, then had to return her medal when her identity was discovered. Rena Rusty Kanakogi disguised herself as a man to compete in the 1959 New York State YMCA Judo Championships. the only way women could participate in serious competition. She won her weight division but was stripped of her medal when officials discovered her deception. The soft thud of bodies hitting practice mats, the whispered instructions from sensei, the gentle respect of martial artists bowing to one another. She found discipline and strength in a world that told women they were too fragile for combat sports. The gentle victory. She spent the rest of her life fighting for women's judo, eventually seeing it become an Olympic sport. The YMCA returned her medal 30 years later, acknowledging she had earned it fairly. How many medals are waiting to be reclaimed by those brave enough to compete in their own names? You're drifting off now to Imperial Russia, where a young woman disguised herself as a man and spent 10 years as a cavalry officer fighting against Napoleon while writing secret memoirs of her adventures. Nadezhda cut her hair, deepened her voice, and enlisted as Alexander Durov in the Russian cavalry. She fought at Borodino and other major battles, rising through the ranks while maintaining her masculine disguise through careful attention to military bearing and male camaraderie. The thunder of horse hooves across frozen steppes, the gentle scratch of quill on parchment by candlelight, the soft prayers whispered before dawn battles. She lived split between the warrior she became and the writer she remained. The beautiful secret. She kept detailed journals of her double life, creating one of history's most intimate accounts of gender deception and military service. What stories are we writing in the margins of the lives others think we're living? You're settling into the rhythm of jazz now, traveling to 1940s Paris, where America's most famous entertainer used her celebrity as perfect cover for carrying military secrets across Nazi-occupied Europe. Josephine Baker danced her way into French high society, then used her fame to smuggle intelligence hidden in her sheet music and pinned inside her costumes. She attended embassy parties, charmed German officers, and passed secrets to the French resistance while everyone saw only the glamorous performer. The soft rustle of silk gowns against marble floors, the gentle clink of champagne glasses, the whispered conversations in embassy ballrooms. She moved through enemy territory protected by her own celebrity, turning performance into patriotism. The beautiful irony: the woman America rejected for her race became France's most valuable spy. She earned the Croix de Guerre and the Legion of Honor for her service. How many heroes hide their courage behind the masks the world expects them to wear? You're drifting now to 18th century Versailles, where a French spy lived publicly as a man for 33 years, then as a woman for 33 years, keeping even kings guessing about their true identity. Charles Dion served as Louis XV's secret agent, sometimes disguised as a woman to infiltrate foreign courts, sometimes as a man conducting official diplomacy. After decades of switching between identities, they chose to live as a woman, claiming it had always been their true nature. The gentle whisper of silk against silk, the soft scratch of diplomatic quills, the muffled conversations behind palace tapestries. They navigated the most rigid court in Europe by refusing to be confined to a single identity. The tender mystery. Even after death, doctors couldn't agree on their biological sex. Perhaps the greatest disguise was making everyone forget that gender itself might be performance. What truths about ourselves do we discover when we're brave enough to try on different lives? You're resting now in Civil War America, where a woman disguised as a male Union soldier then disguised herself again as a female Confederate spy, becoming a double agent for the North. Sarah enlisted as Frank Thompson and served 2 years as a Union soldier. When asked to spy behind enemy lines, she transformed herself into Bridget O'Shea, an Irish peddler woman, and later into a male slave named Cuff, gathering intelligence for the Union cause. The soft crackle of campfires in Virginia forests, the gentle rustle of petticoats over hidden weapons, the whispered passwords at midnight river crossings. She lived 3 different lives simultaneously, each protecting the others. The Gentle Truth. After the war, she revealed her identity and became the only woman admitted to the Union Veterans Organization, finally able to claim her service in her own name. How many masks must we wear before we find the courage to show our truest face? You're floating now to ancient China, where a young woman took her aging father's place in the imperial army and served with such distinction that emperors wanted to reward her with high office. Mulan bound her chest, deepened her voice, and joined the army as her father's son. For 12 years, she fought against invading forces, rising through military ranks while carefully maintaining her masculine disguise through discipline and strategic distance from her fellow soldiers. The soft flutter of prayer flags in mountain winds, the gentle thud of practice swords on wooden posts, the whispered strategies in pre-dawn war councils. She protected her family's honor while discovering her own strength. The beautiful choice. When the emperor offered her wealth and position, she asked only to return home. Her comrades who visited later were amazed to discover their fierce companion wearing silk robes and makeup. What strength do we find when we step into the roles others say we cannot fill? You're settling deeper now into 19th century medicine, where Britain's most skilled military surgeon spent an entire adult lifetime disguised as a man, performing the first successful cesarean section in Africa, while maintaining perfect masculine deception. James Barry graduated from medical school, served as an army doctor across the British Empire, and pioneered medical reforms in an era when women couldn't even attend university. For 5 decades, colleagues knew only a brilliant, eccentric physician who championed patient care and military hygiene. The soft clink of surgical instruments, the gentle rustle of medical journals, the whispered consultations in colonial hospitals. They saved countless lives while living a life that required constant vigilance to maintain. The gentle shock. Only after death did examination reveal Barry's biological sex. The discovery was so scandalous that military records were sealed for 100 years. What healing might we offer the world if we refused to let others' limitations define our capabilities? You're drifting now to colonial Chile, where a Spanish noblewoman maintained her respectable facade while secretly leading a network of bandits and murderers for over 30 years. Known as La Quintrala, Catalina appeared to be a devout Catholic socialite, attending Mass daily and hosting elegant parties. Behind this mask, she poisoned rivals, ordered assassinations, and commanded a small army of loyal servants who helped her eliminate anyone who threatened her power or property. The soft whisper of rosary beads, the gentle rustle of silk mantillas, the muffled conversations in convent corridors. She moved between sacred and profane worlds with practiced ease, using religious devotion to hide ruthless ambition. The dark irony, her social position and religious mask protected her so well that despite widespread suspicion, she was never formally convicted of any crimes. How perfectly can we hide our shadow selves behind the faces society expects to see? You're resting now in the American South, where a Cuban-born woman created an elaborate masculine identity, enlisted in the Confederate Army, and later became a Union spy while writing one of the war's most controversial memoirs. Loretta bound her chest, attached a false mustache, and enlisted as Lieutenant Harry T. Buford. She fought at Bull Run and Ball's Bluff, then transitioned to espionage work, using both her male and female identities to gather intelligence for whichever side paid better. The soft rustle of false whiskers against collar edges, the gentle creak of leather holsters, the whispered negotiations in hotel lobbies. She turned deception into art, loyalty into currency, and survival into a performance. The Gentle Controversy. Her memoirs were so extraordinary that historians still debate whether she embellished her adventures or whether truth truly was stranger than fiction. What stories do we tell about ourselves when we know no one will believe them anyway? You're floating now to 18th century battlefields, where an Irish woman disguised herself as a male soldier and spent years fighting across Europe, searching military hospitals and prisoner camps for her missing husband. Kit enlisted as Christopher Welsh after her husband was press-ganged into military service. She served in the War of Spanish Succession, fighting at Blenheim and Ramillies, all while secretly visiting wounded soldiers in field hospitals, hoping to find news of her beloved. The soft clank of dragoon spurs on cobblestones, the gentle rustle of military dispatches, the whispered prayers over battlefield casualties. Love drove her to masquerade, duty kept her fighting, and hope sustained her deception. The tender ending. She finally found her husband in a Flemish prison, revealed her identity, and they served together openly until his death in battle. How far would we travel? How many faces would we wear to find the ones we love? You're settling now into 1817 England, where a young woman appeared in a village speaking an unknown language, convinced local gentry she was an exotic princess, and maintained this elaborate deception for months. Mary Baker, a servant girl from Devon, created an entire fictional identity as Princess Caribou from the island of Javasu. She invented a language, customs, and royal bearing so convincing that wealthy families competed to host her. Scholars studied her native tongue, and newspapers celebrated England's exotic visitor. The soft rustle of borrowed silk gowns, the gentle murmur of invented prayers, the whispered translations of imaginary customs. She transformed herself so completely that even she seemed to believe in Princess Caribou. The gentle unraveling. A Portuguese sailor recognized her invented language as a mixture of real and imagined words, but by then she had already proven that people see what they want to believe. What royalty lives within us, waiting for the right costume and stage to reveal itself? Hey friends, if you love this series, don't forget to subscribe for more gentle journeys through history's hidden stories. You're drifting now to Nazi-occupied France, where an American woman with a wooden leg became the Allies' most effective spy, coordinating resistance networks while the Gestapo desperately hunted the limping lady. Virginia Hall posed as various characters: a French milkmaid, an elderly peasant woman, a journalist, while organizing escape routes, coordinating supply drops, and training resistance fighters. Her wooden leg, which she called Cuthbert, became both liability and asset in her dangerous work. The soft crunch of snow under wooden prosthetics, the gentle rustle of forged papers, the whispered codes in darkened farmhouses. She moved through occupied territory like a ghost, always one step ahead of capture. The beautiful recognition. She became the first civilian woman to receive the Distinguished Service Cross. Though the ceremony was private, she was already planning her next mission. What limitations become our greatest strengths when we refuse to let them define our possibilities? You're settling into the shadows of Belle Epoque Paris now, where a Dutch woman reinvented herself as an exotic Eastern princess and became history's most famous spy, though she may never have spied at all. Margaretha Zell transformed herself into Mata Hari, claiming to be a Javanese temple dancer who performed sacred rituals. She created elaborate backstories, spoke of Hindu mysteries, and captivated European audiences with dances that were pure invention disguised as ancient tradition. The soft rustle of silk veils against marble floors, the gentle flicker of stage lights through incense smoke, the whispered rumors in opera house corridors. She lived so completely in her created identity that even she seemed to believe in the exotic princess she had become. The tragic irony. When France needed a scapegoat for military failures, they executed her as a German spy, though historians now believe she was guilty only of loving too many men from different countries. How many of us create ourselves so completely that we forget where the performance ends and the person begins? You're drifting now to 18th century England, where a woman disguised herself as a man and served as a British Marine for 4 years, fighting in India while searching for her missing husband. Hannah bound her chest, cut her hair, and enlisted as James Gray. She served aboard ships, fought in the siege of Pondicherry, and was wounded multiple times while maintaining her masculine disguise through careful attention to military bearing and masculine customs. The gentle creak of ship timbers in tropical waters, the soft rustle of uniform wool in monsoon heat, the whispered prayers before dawn battles. She carried both musket and hope across the Indian Ocean, serving crown and personal mission equally. The beautiful revelation. She eventually revealed her identity, petitioned the government for her military pension, and received it. One of the first women officially recognized for military service. What journeys do we undertake when love compels us to become someone we never imagined we could be? You're floating now to 17th century Sweden, where a woman accused of witchcraft escaped execution by disguising herself as a man and living undetected in the same village that had condemned her to death. After being sentenced to burn for witchcraft, Brita escaped and returned disguised as Lars, a traveling craftsman. For 4 decades, she lived among the same people who had condemned her, eventually becoming a respected member of the community while her female identity remained legally dead. The soft shuffle of wooden clogs on village cobblestones, the gentle rasp of woodworking tools, the whispered conversations by cottage firesides. She found safety by becoming invisible in plain sight, hiding her condemned self beneath layers of masculine respectability. The gentle mystery. Records suggest some villagers suspected Lars's true identity, but chose to protect rather than expose her, creating a conspiracy of kindness. How many second chances do we give ourselves when we're brave enough to reinvent who we are? You're resting now in California's gold rush era, where the most skilled stagecoach driver in the Sierra Nevada mountains lived 30 years as a man and may have been the first woman to vote in a U.S. election. Charlie drove male coaches through treacherous mountain passes, fought off bandits, and earned respect as one of the finest drivers on the frontier. Colleagues knew only a gruff, tobacco-chewing driver who could handle 6 horses on the steepest trails in any weather. The soft jingle of harness bells in mountain air, the gentle creak of leather reins, the whispered curses that kept horses steady on cliff-edge roads. They navigated both physical and social terrain with equal skill, finding freedom in frontier anonymity. The beautiful discovery. Only after death did neighbors learn that Charlie had been born Charlotte, making their 1868 vote potentially the first cast by a woman in California. What frontiers call to us when we're willing to leave behind the limitations others place on our possibilities? You're settling deeper now into 18th century European courts, where a man born Giuseppe Balsamo transformed himself into Count Alessandro Cagliostro, claiming to be thousands of years old and possessing the secrets of eternal life. This Sicilian blacksmith's son created an elaborate persona as an ancient Egyptian mystic, complete with alchemical knowledge, prophetic visions, and miraculous healing powers. He convinced nobility across Europe that he had lived since biblical times and could transform base metals into gold. The soft whisper of silk robes against marble, the gentle bubbling of alchemical apparatus, the hushed conversations in palace chambers. He moved through the highest circles of power protected by the mystery he had created around himself. The elegant downfall. His involvement in the diamond necklace affair exposed him as mortal after all, but by then he had lived more fully in his invented identity than most people live in their given ones. What magic do we possess when we dare to become the legends we dream ourselves to be? You're floating now to 1848 Georgia, where a light-skinned enslaved woman disguised herself as a sickly white gentleman traveling north with his loyal slave, who was actually her darker-skinned husband. Ellen bound her arm in a sling to avoid signing documents, wrapped her face in bandages claiming toothache, and adopted the mannerisms of a wealthy invalid. For 4 days, she and William traveled openly through the South, staying in the finest hotels while fleeing to freedom. The soft rustle of silk bandages against porcelain skin, the gentle clatter of carriage wheels on cobblestones, the whispered deferences of hotel staff to apparent wealth. She hid in plain sight behind privilege and performance. The beautiful irony: the very system that oppressed her provided the disguise that freed her. Her light skin, inherited from her enslaver father, became the key to her liberty. How do we transform the very things meant to limit us into the tools of our liberation? You're drifting now to 14th century France, where a widow disguised herself as a pirate captain and spent 13 years hunting French ships to avenge her husband's execution, becoming one of the most feared corsairs in the English Channel. After the French king executed her husband for treason, Jeanne sold her estates, bought 3 warships, and painted them black with red sails. She disguised her noble identity behind the fearsome persona of the Lioness of Brittany, personally executing French nobles she captured. The soft snap of black sails in Atlantic winds, the gentle creak of ship timber under stars, the whispered prayers before dawn raids. She found purpose in vengeance, transforming grief into a calling that terrified the French nobility. The remarkable ending: she eventually retired from piracy, remarried an English nobleman, and lived quietly in England, hanging up her corsair identity like a costume no longer needed. What fierce creatures live within us, waiting for the right wounds to call them forth? You're settling now into medieval Ireland, where a 10-year-old boy was trained to impersonate a prince, crowned as Edward VI, and led a rebellion against Henry VII before his true identity was discovered. Lambert, a baker's son from Oxford, was chosen for his resemblance to the Earl of Warwick and carefully coached in royal mannerisms. Irish nobles, desperate for a Yorkist claimant, crowned him king in Dublin Cathedral and raised an army in his name. The soft rustle of silk coronation robes on small shoulders, the gentle echo of cathedral bells, the whispered coaching in royal protocol. He played a king so convincingly that thousands died fighting for his claim to a throne he had no right to inherit. The merciful ending: after his defeat, Henry VII spared the boy, recognizing he was merely a pawn. Lambert spent the rest of his life working in the royal kitchens, perhaps the only deposed king to find employment with his conqueror. What thrones are we asked to claim when others see possibilities in us that we cannot see in ourselves? You're floating now to 16th century Morocco, where a woman governed the city of Tétouan while secretly commanding a fleet of Barbary corsairs, balancing diplomacy and piracy with remarkable skill. Sayyida al-Hurra appeared to European diplomats as a legitimate ruler negotiating trade agreements. Behind this facade, she commanded pirates who controlled Mediterranean shipping lanes, coordinating attacks with the famous Barbarossa while maintaining the fiction of peaceful governance. The soft whisper of diplomatic silks, the distant thunder of cannon across blue waters, the gentle scratch of treaties being signed above treasure maps. She moved between two worlds, the formal court and the lawless sea. The elegant balance: she ruled for 30 years, never revealing to Christian diplomats that the reasonable woman they negotiated with was also the pirate queen they feared. How do we navigate between the roles others expect us to play and the power we know we possess? You're drifting deeper now into Caribbean waters, where an Irish woman abandoned wealth and respectability to sail with pirates, disguising herself as a man when necessary and living exactly as she chose. Anne left her wealthy husband and inheritance to join Calico Jack's crew, where she met Mary Read, another woman living as a male pirate. Together they fought, plundered, and commanded respect from the most dangerous men in the Caribbean while maintaining whatever gender presentation suited their purposes. The gentle lap of turquoise waves against wooden hulls, the soft rustle of captured silk in pirates' quarters. the whispered strategies in moonlit ships' cabins. She chose freedom over security, adventure over expectation. The beautiful defiance. When captured and facing execution, she reportedly told Calico Jack that if he had fought like a man, he would not be dying like a dog. She disappeared from historical records, perhaps escaping to live another invented life. What would we choose if we were brave enough to abandon everything others expect us to value? You're settling into medieval Sweden now, where a woman disguised herself as a male military commander and held Kalmar Castle against Danish forces for 7 months after her husband's capture. When the Danes besieged Kalmar Castle, Christina bound her hair, donned armor, and commanded the defense, while everyone believed her husband still led the garrison. She coordinated artillery, managed supplies, and negotiated with enemy commanders who never suspected they faced a woman behind the visor. The soft clank of steel against stone battlements, the gentle rustle of banners in Baltic winds, the whispered strategy sessions in torchlit war rooms. She transformed from nobleman's wife to military leader, finding strength in necessity and purpose in deception. The honorable ending. When surrender became inevitable, she revealed her identity and negotiated terms that saved her garrison's lives, earning respect from the very enemies she had deceived. What leadership emerges when circumstances demand we become more than others believe we can be? You're drifting now to colonial Bogotá, where a young woman used her work as a seamstress to wealthy Spanish families as perfect cover for gathering intelligence and coordinating revolutionary activities. La Pola sewed clothes for Spanish officers' wives while secretly copying military documents, passing messages between revolutionaries, and recruiting sympathizers to the independence cause. Her needle and thread became tools of liberation, each fitting session an opportunity for espionage. The soft whisper of silk thread through fine fabric, the gentle rustle of colonial gowns, the hushed conversations in drawing rooms where secrets hid behind embroidery hoops. She stitched together revolution while appearing to serve the very system she sought to overthrow. The tragic courage. When discovered, she faced execution with such dignity that witnesses wept. Her final words calling for Colombian freedom became a rallying cry for independence. How do we weave liberation into the everyday work others expect us to perform? You're floating now to 18th century China, where a woman hid her scholarly achievements behind masculine pen names and male clothing to pursue astronomy and mathematics in a world that forbade female intellectuals. Wang Zhenyi dressed as a man to attend scholarly gatherings, published scientific papers under male pseudonyms, and created revolutionary theories about lunar eclipses while maintaining the public facade of a dutiful daughter managing household affairs. The gentle scratch of calligraphy brushes on rice paper, the soft rustle of star charts in midnight studies, the whispered calculations by candlelight. She mapped celestial movements while navigating earthly restrictions with equal precision. The beautiful legacy. Her astronomical writings survived because male scholars respected the work, never knowing it came from a woman who died at 29, leaving behind knowledge that advanced Chinese science. What discoveries await when we refuse to let others' limitations define the boundaries of our curiosity? You're resting now in 18th century England, where a teenage girl disguised herself as a boy and served on both ships and battlefields, fighting in the Caribbean and Europe while maintaining her masculine identity for years. Mary Ann bound her chest, cut her hair, and served as John Taylor, first as a drummer boy in the army, then as a cabin boy aboard naval vessels. She fought at the Battle of Valenciennes and sailed to the West Indies, carefully maintaining her disguise through military discipline and youthful appearance. The soft thud of drum beats across European battlefields, the gentle creak of ship rigging in tropical waters, the whispered sea shanties under Caribbean stars. She found family and purpose among sailors and soldiers who never questioned her boyish devotion to duty. The Gentle Recognition, her autobiography, published after revealing her identity, became one of the first memoirs by a woman veteran, inspiring others to claim their hidden service. What homes do we find among those who accept us for the roles we choose to play? You're settling deeper into Civil War Virginia, where a teenage Southern belle used her charm and apparent innocence to gather Union military secrets, hiding her espionage activities behind the mask of a flirtatious hostess. Belle entertained Union officers in her family's hotel, appearing to be nothing more than a vivacious 17-year-old girl interested in dancing and gossip. Behind this facade, she memorized troop movements, copied dispatches, and passed intelligence to Confederate forces through an elaborate network of contacts. The soft rustle of silk ball gowns, the gentle clink of crystal glasses at dinner parties, the whispered compliments and coded messages exchanged during waltzes. She transformed social occasions into intelligence-gathering operations, using feminine wiles as her primary weapon. The dramatic irony: she was arrested multiple times, but always released because Union officers couldn't believe someone so young and charming could be a serious threat to their cause. How do we use others' assumptions about us as the very tools of our secret purposes? You're floating now to medieval China, where a woman disguised herself as a man to pursue military career, rising to become a general and commanding thousands of troops while maintaining her masculine identity throughout her adult life. Huang bound her chest, deepened her voice, and enlisted in the Imperial Army as a young man. She proved herself in battle after battle, rising through ranks based on military skill and strategic brilliance while carefully maintaining her masculine persona through 4 decades of service. The soft flutter of military banners in mountain winds, the gentle clink of armor in pre-dawn formations, the whispered orders that moved armies across vast Chinese landscapes. She commanded respect through competence, never needing to reveal the secret that made her service possible. The posthumous discovery: only after death did military physicians discover her biological sex, shocking the army that had followed her leadership for decades without question. What authority do we command when we focus on our capabilities rather than others' expectations? You're drifting now to Civil War America, where a young woman left her family's farm disguised as a man, enlisted in the Union Army, and wrote letters home describing her military service while carefully maintaining her masculine identity. Sarah cut her hair, bound her chest, and enlisted as Lyons Wakeman, sending part of her military pay home to support her family. She served with the 153rd New York Infantry, fighting in Louisiana while writing letters that carefully described her experiences without revealing her deception. The soft scratch of pencil on paper by campfire light, the gentle rustle of blue wool uniforms, the whispered prayers before dawn marches through southern swamps. She found purpose and steady income in military service while hiding her true identity from both family and fellow soldiers. The touching correspondence, her letters home, discovered decades later, provide intimate glimpses into both the Civil War experience and the careful maintenance of gender deception under extreme circumstances. How do we balance the truths we share with those we love when living honestly might endanger everything we've built? You're settling now into 6th century Constantinople, where a former actress used her theatrical training to transform herself from entertainment to empress, wielding power behind elaborate court ceremonies and imperial disguises. Theodora rose from performing in mime shows to marrying Emperor Justinian, using her acting skills to master the complex choreography of Byzantine court life. She adopted imperial bearing, religious devotion, and political sophistication, while never forgetting the performance techniques that made her transformation possible. The soft whisper of purple silk against marble floors, the gentle echo of prayers in golden churches, the hushed negotiations in palace chambers where empires rose and fell. She performed power until she possessed it, then used it to reshape the Roman world. The lasting legacy. She influenced laws protecting women's rights and religious minorities, proving that those who understand performance often understand power's deepest truths. What empires could we build if we used our knowledge of performing for others to perform the roles we truly wish to claim? You're floating now to 17th century France, where a woman lived openly as both opera star and swashbuckling duelist, using her theatrical training to navigate between feminine and masculine roles as circumstances required. Mademoiselle de Maupin performed as leading lady in Paris opera houses, while also fighting duels as a gentleman, switching between elaborate gowns and men's clothing depending on whether the evening called for singing or swordplay. She courted women while married to men, creating scandal across Europe. The silver ring of rapiers in moonlit gardens, the soaring notes of arias in candlelit theaters, the whispered gossip in aristocratic salons where her latest adventure became everyone's entertainment. She refused to be contained by any single identity or expectation. The brilliant audacity. King Louis XIV personally pardoned her constant dueling because her talent transcended her unconventional behavior, making her one of history's most celebrated performers. What freedoms await when we refuse to choose between the different aspects of who we are? Hey friends, if you love this series, don't forget to subscribe for more gentle journeys through history's hidden stories. You're resting now in Revolutionary War, Georgia, where a frontier woman used her reputation as a harmless backwoods character to capture British soldiers who underestimated the danger hiding behind her simple disguise. Nancy Hart appeared to be nothing more than an illiterate mountain woman, speaking in dialect and acting the part of ignorant frontier wife. When British soldiers demanded food at her cabin, she served them while secretly sending her daughter for help, then held them at gunpoint until patriots arrived to capture them. The soft crackle of pine logs in stone fireplaces, the gentle bubble of stew pots over open flames, the whispered communications between mother and daughter that saved American lives. She used others' prejudices about frontier women as her greatest weapon, the perfect deception. The soldiers never suspected that the simple woman cooking their dinner was also planning their capture, proving that the most effective disguises often involve appearing to be exactly what others expect to dismiss. What power do we possess when we let others underestimate us while we quietly prepare our next move? You're settling into the trenches of World War I now, where a young English journalist disguised herself as a man and lived as a frontline soldier for 10 days before revealing her identity to astonished military officials. Dorothy cut her hair, bound her chest, and convinced soldiers to help her obtain uniform and papers. She served as Denny Smith in the trenches near Albert, experiencing the reality of warfare that women reporters were forbidden to witness or write about. The soft whisper of pages in wartime notebooks, the gentle rustle of stolen uniforms, the muffled conversations in dugouts where secrets were shared by candlelight. She found the story by becoming part of it. The bittersweet ending. Military censors suppressed her account, fearing other women might attempt similar deceptions. Her remarkable achievement remained hidden for decades. What stories do we silence when we fear others might follow the same brave path? You're floating now to ancient China, where a young woman took her elderly father's place in the imperial conscription, serving 12 years as a male soldier before choosing to return home rather than accept military honors. Mulan bound her chest, adopted masculine mannerisms, and marched north to defend against barbarian invasions. She fought with such skill and courage that she rose through military ranks while maintaining her disguise through careful attention to behavior and strategic friendships. The gentle clatter of armor in mountain passes, the soft rustle of military banners in northern winds, the whispered prayers for family honor around evening campfires. She served duty and love equally. The beautiful choice. When offered rewards and promotion, she asked only to return home, revealing her identity and proving that the greatest heroes often seek no recognition. How do we honor both family and calling when they seem to demand different sacrifices? You're drifting now to Renaissance Venice, where a merchant's daughter disguised herself as a man and captained trading vessels across the Mediterranean, building a successful maritime business while maintaining her masculine identity for decades. Francesca adopted male dress and bearing, commanding respect through seamanship and business acumen rather than birth or connections. She navigated both treacherous waters and commercial negotiations while carefully maintaining her disguise among crews and port authorities. The soft lap of Adriatic waves against wooden hulls, the gentle creak of rigging in Mediterranean winds, the whispered negotiations in harbors where fortunes were made and lost. She found freedom on the endless sea, the quiet success. She accumulated wealth and respect throughout her career, proving that competence transcends the boundaries others place on our possibilities. What horizons open when we navigate by our abilities rather than others' expectations? You're settling deeper into 17th century battlefields, where a woman followed her soldier husband to war, then continued fighting in his memory across Europe for nearly 2 decades, serving in multiple armies while disguised as a man. After her husband's death in battle, Maria continued his military career, binding her chest and serving as a male soldier in Dutch, Spanish, and French armies. She fought at sieges and skirmishes across Europe while maintaining her masculine disguise through military discipline and camaraderie. The soft thud of musket balls in wooden shields, the gentle rustle of campaign maps by firelight, the whispered stories shared in soldiers' quarters where grief transformed into purpose. She found family among warriors. The touching memorial. She fought not for cause or country, but to honor love, proving that the deepest disguises often serve the heart's truest purposes. How do we carry forward the dreams of those we've lost when we're the only ones left to fulfill them? You're floating now to medieval China, where a bandit leader disguised himself as a wandering Confucian scholar, using literary knowledge and gentle mannerisms to hide his true identity while traveling between hideouts. Shi Jin adopted scholarly robes, calligraphy skills, and philosophical discourse to move safely through territories where his outlaw identity would mean death. He quoted classics while planning raids, discussed poetry while coordinating with fellow bandits. The gentle scratch of brushes on silk scrolls, the soft rustle of scholarly robes in mountain monasteries, the whispered verses that contained coded messages for criminal confederates. He found safety in learning. The elegant irony. His scholarly disguise was so convincing that some monasteries invited him to teach, making him simultaneously China's most wanted criminal and most respected visiting scholar. What knowledge do we discover when we're forced to become the people we pretend to be? You're resting now in 18th century France, where a woman learned surgery from her physician father, then practiced medicine disguised as a man for over 20 years, becoming one of Paris's most skilled doctors while maintaining perfect masculine deception. Catherine bound her chest, deepened her voice, and established a medical practice under a male identity. She performed operations, treated patients, and consulted with colleagues who never suspected their respected peer was legally forbidden from practicing medicine. The soft clink of surgical instruments, the gentle rustle of medical texts by candlelight, the whispered consultations where healing transcended the boundaries of law and custom. She served life before law. The quiet revolution. Many patients she saved never knew their lives depended on a woman's forbidden knowledge and illegal compassion. What healing could we offer if we ignored the rules that prevent us from using our gifts? You're settling into colonial Virginia now, where a person born with ambiguous anatomy lived alternately as Thomas and Thomasine, adapting their gender presentation to circumstances while working as an indentured servant in the New World. Hall served in the military as Thomas, worked as a seamstress as Thomasine, and navigated colonial society by choosing whichever identity suited their current needs or employment opportunities. They moved fluidly between masculine and feminine roles as survival demanded. The soft rustle of both military wool and feminine linen, the gentle scratch of needles through fabric and quills across paper, the whispered conversations about identity in a world that demanded clear categories. They found freedom in fluidity. The remarkable acceptance. Colonial records show neighbors eventually accepted Hall's dual nature, creating legal precedent for non-binary identity in early America. How do we honor the complexity of human experience when society insists on simple categories? You're floating now to antebellum Georgia, where a light-skinned enslaved woman disguised herself as a sickly white gentleman traveling north with his loyal, dark-skinned manservant, who was actually her husband planning their joint escape to freedom. Ellen bound her arm in a sling to avoid riding, wrapped her jaw claiming toothache, and adopted the mannerisms of wealthy invalids. For 4 days, they traveled openly through the South, staying in fine hotels while fleeing toward liberty through performance and deception. The soft rustle of silk bandages against pale skin, the gentle clink of carriage wheels on southern roads, the whispered endearments disguised as servants' concern for master's health. Love made the dangerous deception possible. The beautiful irony. The system that oppressed them provided the very disguise that freed them, turning privilege into the key to their liberation. How do we transform the tools of our oppression into the instruments of our freedom? You're drifting deeper into 18th century battlefields, where an Irish woman disguised herself as a male soldier and served 15 years in British cavalry, fighting across Europe while searching for her husband, who had been press-ganged into military service. Christian bound her chest, adopted masculine bearing, and enlisted as Christopher Welsh. She fought at Blenheim and Ramillies, earned promotion to corporal, and was wounded multiple times while maintaining her disguise through military discipline and careful friendships. The soft thunder of cavalry charges across European plains, the gentle creak of leather in pre-dawn formations, the whispered prayers before battles where love and duty intertwined. She rode toward both victory and reunion. The joyful discovery. She eventually found her husband serving in another regiment, revealed her identity, and they served together openly until his death in combat. What distances do we travel when love gives us courage to become who we never imagined we could be? You're settling now into ancient Mesopotamia, where a Sumerian high priestess used religious authority to disguise her revolutionary literary activities, becoming history's first known author while appearing to fulfill traditional feminine roles. Enheduanna served as high priestess of the moon god Nana, while secretly composing hymns and poems that established literary conventions still used today. She balanced religious duties with creative innovation, using sacred responsibilities to hide groundbreaking artistic work. The soft whisper of reed styluses on clay tablets, the gentle flicker of temple oil lamps, the hushed recitations in ziggurat chambers where literature was born in sacred disguise. She created art within worship. The eternal legacy. Her signed works survived 4,000 years, making her humanity's first known individual author, hidden in plain sight within religious tradition. What creations await when we use the roles others expect us to play as cover for the art we're called to make? You're settling into 17th century Naples now, where a fisherman's wife disguised her revolutionary planning behind the mask of simple domesticity, organizing one of Italy's most successful popular uprisings while appearing to be nothing more than a loyal spouse. Antonia used her market visits and neighborhood conversations to coordinate resistance against Spanish taxation, passing messages through fish sales and organizing meetings in her kitchen while maintaining the facade of an ordinary housewife concerned only with daily bread and family welfare. The soft splash of fishing nets in Naples harbor, the gentle rustle of market baskets, the whispered conversations over pasta that changed the course of kingdoms. She found power in the places others overlooked. The beautiful irony. History remembers her husband Masaniello as the revolution's leader, but recent scholarship suggests she was the true architect of the uprising that briefly freed Naples from Spanish rule. What revolutions begin in the kitchens and markets where others assume only ordinary life unfolds? You're drifting now to 10th century Cordoba, where a Jewish diplomat disguised his extensive intelligence-gathering missions as simple trading expeditions, creating the most detailed maps of medieval Europe while appearing to pursue only commercial interests. Ibrahim traveled from Prague to Kiev under the cover of a spice merchant, carefully documenting political alliances, military capabilities, and economic resources while maintaining his disguise through genuine trading activities and merchant connections across the continent. The gentle clink of silver coins in leather pouches, the soft rustle of parchment maps drawn by candlelight, the whispered negotiations in multiple languages where information proved more valuable than silk or spices. He traded in knowledge. The lasting legacy. His detailed reports provided the Islamic world with unprecedented knowledge of Christian Europe, influencing diplomatic and military strategies for generations. How do we explore the world when we disguise our curiosity as something others consider completely ordinary? You're floating now to colonial Peru, where a young woman escaped her convent, transformed herself into a soldier, and spent 20 years fighting in the conquest of South America while everyone believed she was a man seeking fortune and glory. Catalina fled the convent at 15, bound her chest, and enlisted as a conquistador under multiple male identities. She fought in Chile and Peru, killed men in duels, and rose through military ranks while maintaining her masculine disguise through careful attention to soldierly behavior. The soft shuffle of sandaled feet escaping through convent corridors, the distant clash of steel in Andean valleys, the whispered confessions that revealed truths too strange for anyone to believe. She found freedom in the new world's chaos. The remarkable ending. When she finally revealed her identity, both the Pope and the King of Spain granted her special privileges, recognizing her unique status as both saint and warrior. What new worlds open when we're brave enough to escape the lives others have planned for us? You're resting now in 18th century Dublin, where a woman continued her deceased brother's medical practice by assuming his identity, treating patients and performing surgery while maintaining perfect masculine deception for over a decade. Margaret adopted her brother's name, appearance, and professional credentials after his sudden death, continuing to treat his patients and accepting new ones while carefully maintaining the illusion that he had never died, using her genuine medical knowledge learned by observing his work. The soft clink of surgical instruments in Georgian Dublin, the gentle rustle of medical journals by firelight, the whispered consultations where healing transcended the boundaries of identity and law. She served life before truth. The touching discovery. Many patients she saved during plague outbreaks never knew their lives had been preserved by a woman practicing medicine illegally under her brother's stolen identity. How do we honor both the dead and the living when continuing their work requires us to disappear entirely? You're settling deeper into medieval China, where one of history's greatest poets published her revolutionary verses under masculine pseudonyms, transforming Chinese literature while maintaining the facade of a dutiful Confucian wife and scholar's assistant. Li Qingzhao wrote intimate poems about love, loss, and female experience while publicly serving as her husband's research assistant. She published her most daring work under male pen names, allowing her to explore themes forbidden to female poets in Song Dynasty society. The gentle scratch of brushes on silk scrolls, the soft rustle of poetry manuscripts hidden beneath household accounts, the whispered recitations in women's quarters where forbidden verses found their true audience. she wrote in two voices, The Beautiful Legacy. Her poems survived because male scholars respected the work, never knowing China's greatest lyric poet had hidden her identity behind masculine literary conventions. What art emerges when we disguise our truest voices as something the world is prepared to hear? You're floating now to Civil War battlefields, where a female surgeon adopted masculine dress not as disguise, but as practical necessity, becoming the only woman to receive the Medal of Honor while refusing to apologize for her unconventional appearance. Dr. Walker wore men's clothing because it allowed her to move freely on battlefields and operate on wounded soldiers without the hindrance of corsets and long skirts. She maintained her professional identity while challenging every convention about feminine appearance and behavior. The soft rustle of modified uniforms in field hospitals, the gentle scrape of surgical instruments saving lives, the whispered arguments about propriety that followed her wherever healing was needed. She chose function over convention. The principled stand. She was arrested multiple times for wearing men's clothing, but always returned to her chosen dress, proving that some disguises become statements of authentic identity. How do we distinguish between the masks we wear to hide and the clothes we choose to reveal our truest selves? You're drifting now to Louis XIV's Versailles, where a nobleman moved fluidly between masculine and feminine identities, serving as both court diplomat and celebrated beauty, while maintaining perfect credibility in either role as circumstances required. François Timoleon de Choisy attended court functions as both elegant gentleman and stunning lady, using different gender presentations for different social and diplomatic purposes, while maintaining respect and acceptance in both identities throughout decades of court life. The soft whisper of silk gowns and velvet doublets, the gentle rustle of perfumed letters between identities, the hushed conversations where fluidity became a form of diplomatic advantage. They mastered all possible selves. The remarkable acceptance. Court society embraced both versions of de Choisy, suggesting that aristocratic privilege could sometimes transcend the gender boundaries that confined others. What freedoms await when we refuse to be limited by others' insistence that we choose only one way to be human? You're settling now into colonial India, where the Rani of Jhansi bound her infant son to her back and fought the British East India Company while disguised as a male cavalry officer, becoming one of the rebellion's most feared commanders. Lakshmi Bai cut her hair, donned warrior's clothing, and led cavalry charges against British forces while maintaining masculine appearance and bearing in battle. She fought with such skill and ferocity that British soldiers spoke of her prowess with a mixture of fear and respect. The thunder of horse hooves across Indian plains, the gentle weight of her sleeping son against armor in midnight camps, the whispered strategies that turned housewives into warriors against colonial rule. She carried both sword and cradle. The heroic end. She died fighting, never surrendering her kingdom or revealing weakness, becoming a symbol of resistance that inspired independence movements for generations. How do we protect what we love when love itself must be disguised as something our enemies can understand? You're floating now to 18th century London, where a lady's maid assumed her deceased mistress's identity and lived as a gentlewoman for 30 years, maintaining the deception through careful study of aristocratic mannerisms and social connections. After her employer died suddenly with no relatives, Catherine adopted her name, wardrobe, and social position, using her intimate knowledge of upper-class behavior to maintain the illusion while living comfortably on her inherited estate and investments. The soft rustle of inherited silks, the gentle clink of tea services in drawing rooms where performance became identity, the whispered conversations with neighbors who never suspected their genteel friend had once been a servant. She lived the dream, the elegant success. She died peacefully in her assumed identity, taking the secret to her grave and proving that class itself might be the most successful disguise of all. What possibilities open when we realize that the roles others are born into might simply be performances we can learn to master? You're resting now in ancient China, where a woman deliberately cultivated an ugly appearance to disguise her extraordinary intelligence, eventually marrying the brilliant strategist Zhuge Liang, who saw past her carefully constructed facade to discover her true genius. Wang Yueying dressed plainly, avoided cosmetics, and adopted unflattering mannerisms to hide her beauty and intellectual gifts from men who would have been intimidated by her capabilities, revealing her true nature only to someone wise enough to value mind over appearance. The soft rustle of deliberately plain robes, the gentle scratch of brushes calculating military strategies, the whispered conversations where intellect finally found its match in someone who valued wisdom above beauty. She found love through truth. The beautiful revelation. When she finally revealed her true appearance and full intellectual capacity, she became her husband's most trusted advisor, helping plan the strategies that shaped Chinese history. What magnificent selves do we hide when we fear others cannot handle the full truth of who we are? You're settling into Renaissance Italy now, where a young woman disguised her identity by signing her paintings with ambiguous initials, becoming one of history's greatest artists, while most buyers assumed they were purchasing works by a man. Artemisia painted powerful biblical heroines and mythological scenes while carefully obscuring her gender in signatures and contracts. She created masterpieces depicting strong women that male patrons admired, never realizing they were celebrating feminine strength painted by feminine hands. The soft whisper of brushes against canvas, the gentle smell of oil paints in Florence workshops, the muffled conversations where artistic genius transcended the boundaries others placed on creative expression. She painted truth in disguise. The beautiful irony, her paintings of powerful women like Judith and Jael were so compelling that male critics praised their masculine strength, never suspecting the artist understood feminine power from lived experience. What truths do we reveal when we hide ourselves behind the very work that expresses our deepest understanding? You're drifting now to 18th century Paris, where a woman pursued advanced mathematics by adopting a male pen name, corresponding with the greatest mathematicians of her age, while maintaining perfect masculine deception for over a decade. Sophie wrote to Gauss, Lagrange, and other mathematical giants as Monsieur Antoine Auguste Leblanc, contributing groundbreaking work to number theory and mathematical physics, while carefully maintaining her masculine identity through scholarly correspondence and academic submissions. The gentle scratch of quills calculating infinite series, the soft rustle of mathematical papers in candlelit studies, the whispered proofs that advanced human knowledge while hiding behind necessary deception. She found truth through disguise. The touching revelation. When Gauss finally learned his brilliant correspondent was a woman, he wrote that her accomplishments were infinitely more precious because of the obstacles she had overcome. How do we pursue our calling when the gatekeepers refuse to recognize our right to enter the conversation? You're floating now to 17th century Scandinavia, where a reigning queen shocked Europe by abdicating her throne, converting to Catholicism, and spending her remaining years dressed in men's clothing while pursuing intellectual freedom in Rome. Christina gave up the Swedish crown, adopted masculine dress and mannerisms, and established herself in Rome as a patron of arts and sciences. She hosted salons, collected manuscripts, and engaged in scholarly debates while maintaining masculine presentation and rejecting all traditional feminine roles. The soft rustle of velvet doublets replacing royal gowns, the gentle murmur of philosophical discussions in Roman palaces, the whispered conversations where power was traded for authenticity. She chose freedom over kingdom. The remarkable legacy. She became one of Europe's most respected intellectuals, proving that sometimes the greatest crown is the one we're brave enough to remove. What thrones do we abandon when we realize the cost of keeping them is abandoning ourselves? You're resting now in 19th century Britain, where a woman disguised herself as a man to attend medical school, then served 46 years as a military surgeon across the British Empire while maintaining perfect masculine deception until death. Margaret adopted the identity of James Barry and studied medicine at Edinburgh University, then served as a military doctor in South Africa, the Caribbean, and Canada. She performed the first successful cesarean section in Africa while carefully maintaining her masculine identity through decades of service. The soft clink of surgical instruments in colonial hospitals, the gentle rustle of military uniforms in tropical heat, the whispered consultations where healing transcended every boundary society had constructed. She served medicine before gender, the posthumous shock. Only after death did medical examination reveal Dr. Barry's biological sex, stunning the military establishment that had respected his medical expertise for nearly half a century. How do we honor our calling when pursuing it requires us to disappear completely into another identity? You're settling deeper into Gold Rush, California, where a Chinese woman disguised herself as a man and sailed to America, becoming a successful merchant in San Francisco's Chinatown while maintaining her masculine identity for over 20 years. Ping bound her chest, adopted masculine mannerisms, and established a successful import business, sending money back to family in China while carefully maintaining her disguise through understanding of both Chinese and American masculine behaviors and business practices. The gentle lap of Pacific waves against merchant ships, the soft rustle of silk goods in Chinatown shops, the whispered negotiations in multiple languages where success depended on perfect performance of borrowed identity. She built bridges between worlds. The quiet success. She accumulated considerable wealth and respect in both Chinese and American business communities, proving that determination could overcome even the most restrictive social barriers. What bridges do we build when we're willing to become whatever our dreams demand? You're drifting now to Restoration London, where England's first professional female playwright disguised her espionage activities behind theatrical pursuits, gathering intelligence in the Dutch Republic while maintaining her cover as a traveling entertainer. Afra used her theatrical connections to gather information about Dutch naval plans, encoding intelligence in letters about play productions and actor gossip while maintaining her cover as a playwright, researching foreign dramatic traditions for English audiences. The soft rustle of play manuscripts hiding coded messages, the gentle clink of theater boxes where secrets were whispered between acts, the muffled conversations where art and espionage intertwined like plot and subplot. She wrote in 2 languages. The financial irony. The government that employed her as a spy later refused to pay her adequately, forcing her to become one of history's first women to earn a living through writing alone. What stages do we perform on when our public art becomes the perfect cover for our Secret Service? You're floating now to medieval Ireland, where a Celtic warrior moved fluidly between masculine and feminine identities, leading troops in battle as a male chieftain while also serving as a female druid and advisor to kings. Conchobar adopted whichever gender presentation best served their purposes, masculine for warfare and political leadership, feminine for religious ceremonies and diplomatic negotiations, moving between identities with such skill that different communities knew them by different names and forms. The soft clang of bronze weapons in misty battlefields, the gentle rustle of ceremonial robes in sacred groves, the whispered prophecies where spiritual power transcended every human category. They served truth in all its forms. The mystical acceptance. Celtic society's fluid approach to gender roles allowed Conchobar to be honored in both identities, suggesting that rigid categories might be more recent inventions than ancient truths. What wisdom emerges when we allow ourselves to be all the different people our souls contain? You're settling now into Jacobean London, where a woman adopted masculine dress and behavior to become one of the city's most notorious criminals, leading a gang of cut purses while maintaining her disguise in both criminal underworld and court appearances. Mall cut purse, dressed as a man, smoked tobacco, carried weapons, and organized criminal activities across London while maintaining masculine presentation, so convincing that many contemporaries believed she was actually male, allowing her unusual freedom in a rigidly stratified society. The soft jingle of stolen purses in London's narrow alleys, the gentle creak of tavern doors in criminal neighborhoods, the whispered plans where gender deception enabled criminal enterprise in unexpected ways. She found freedom in lawlessness. The theatrical legacy. Her extraordinary life inspired numerous plays and ballads, making her one of the first transgender figures to become a popular cultural icon in English literature. What freedoms do we discover when we step outside both law and convention to create entirely new ways of being human? You're drifting now to ancient China, where a woman scholar disguised her political influence behind the traditional role of imperial tutor, effectively governing the Han Empire while maintaining the fiction that she was merely teaching proper feminine behavior. Ban Zhao wrote lessons for women that appeared to advocate traditional feminine submission while actually establishing her authority to advise on imperial policy. She influenced major decisions while maintaining the facade of teaching proper domestic behavior to palace women. The gentle scratch of brushes on imperial silk, the soft rustle of scholarly robes in palace libraries, the whispered advice that shaped dynasties while appearing to concern only household management. She governed through apparent submission. The elegant strategy. By positioning herself as an expert on feminine virtue, she gained access to imperial decision-making that would have been denied to any woman seeking overt political power. How do we exercise influence when the only path to power requires us to disguise our ambitions as something others consider harmless? You're resting now in colonial Peru, where a young nun escaped her convent, transformed herself into a soldier, and spent 20 years fighting in the conquest of South America while everyone believed she was a man seeking fortune and glory. Catalina fled the Basque convent at 15, bound her chest, and enlisted as a conquistador under multiple male identities. She fought in Chile and Peru, killed men in duels, and rose through military ranks while maintaining her masculine disguise through soldierly behavior and strategic violence. The soft shuffle of sandaled feet escaping through convent corridors, the distant clash of steel in Andean valleys, the whispered confessions that revealed truths too strange for anyone to believe. She found freedom in the New World's violence. The papal recognition. When she finally revealed her identity, both the Pope and the King of Spain granted her special privileges, recognizing her unique status as both Holy Virgin and military veteran. What new worlds call to us when we're brave enough to escape the lives others have designed for our supposed protection? You're settling into colonial Mexico now, where a brilliant woman entered a convent to disguise her intellectual pursuits as religious devotion, becoming one of history's greatest poets while hiding revolutionary ideas behind sacred verse. Juana chose religious life not from piety, but as the only way to pursue learning freely. She wrote love poems, scientific treatises, and philosophical arguments while maintaining the facade of devoted nun, using religious metaphors to explore forbidden topics like women's education and intellectual equality. The soft scratch of quills on convent parchment, the gentle rustle of habit sleeves over scientific instruments, the whispered verses that challenged authority while appearing to praise divine mystery. She found freedom in sacred disguise. The tragic silencing. Church authorities eventually recognized the subversive nature of her work and forced her to sell her library and stop writing, but her poems survived to inspire centuries of women. What wisdom do we hide in plain sight when direct truth would silence us forever? You're drifting now to 19th century Paris, where a woman adopted masculine dress and behavior to access literary circles, theaters, and intellectual society forbidden to women, becoming one of France's most celebrated authors while living openly as a man. Aurore Dupin transformed herself into George Sand, wearing men's clothing, smoking cigars, and taking lovers of both sexes while writing novels that scandalized and captivated Europe. She maintained her masculine public persona while writing under a male pseudonym that became more famous than her birth name. The soft rustle of masculine cloaks in Paris boulevards, the gentle clink of cognac glasses in literary salons, the whispered conversations where gender became performance and identity became choice. She lived authentically through disguise. The beautiful legacy. Her relationships with Chopin and other artists, conducted while living as a man, challenged every convention about love, gender, and artistic partnership. What authentic lives await when we're brave enough to discard the costumes others have designed for us? You're floating now on the 1850s Pacific, where a 19-year-old pregnant woman took command of a merchant clipper ship when her husband fell ill, disguising her navigation expertise behind the role of dutiful wife while sailing one of the most dangerous routes in the world. Mary had secretly studied navigation and seamanship while appearing to focus only on domestic duties. When her husband became too sick to command and the first mate proved incompetent, she took control of the Neptune's car and successfully navigated around Cape Horn during storm season. The gentle creak of ship timbers in heavy seas, the soft rustle of nautical charts by lamplight, the whispered commands that guided merchant vessels through waters that claimed countless ships. She found strength in hidden knowledge. The remarkable success. She delivered her cargo, gave birth shortly after reaching port, and proved that expertise matters more than the gender of the hands that hold the wheel. What storms can we navigate when we've secretly prepared for the moments others assume we cannot handle? You're settling deeper into early 20th century China, where a woman artist adopted masculine pseudonyms and painting styles to exhibit her work, becoming one of China's most respected painters while carefully hiding her feminine identity behind traditional masculine artistic conventions. Ling created paintings and calligraphy under various male pen names, adopting masculine subjects and brushwork techniques that allowed her art to be taken seriously by critics and collectors who would have dismissed feminine perspectives or techniques. The soft whisper of silk brushes on rice paper, the gentle scent of ink stones in artist studios, the muffled conversations in galleries where genius hid behind carefully constructed masculine personas. She painted truth through deception, the artistic triumph. Her work influenced Chinese modernist movements while she remained hidden, proving that sometimes the most powerful art emerges from the shadows of assumed identities. How do we honor our creative gifts when sharing them honestly would prevent others from seeing their true value? You're drifting now through 19th century Asia, where a seemingly fragile English spinster used her reputation as a sickly woman to deflect suspicion while becoming one of the era's most daring explorers, traveling alone through forbidden territories. Isabella cultivated an image of delicate femininity in England, while secretly planning expeditions to Tibet, Korea, and remote mountains. She used her reputation as an invalid seeking health cures to justify solo travels that would have been scandalous for a healthy woman. The gentle rustle of travel journals in mountain camps, the soft creak of pack saddles on impossible trails, the whispered conversations with guides who protected the sick English lady while she mapped unexplored territories. She found adventure through assumed frailty. The ironic truth: she was never healthier than when traveling alone through the world's most challenging landscapes, suggesting her illness was perhaps just the cure for conventional feminine restrictions. What journeys await when we use others' assumptions about our limitations as the very passport to our adventures? You're floating now to 17th century Angola, where a queen adopted masculine warrior dress and behavior when leading troops against Portuguese colonizers, transforming herself from royal woman to military commander as circumstances demanded. Queen Nzinga bound her breasts, wore male military regalia, and adopted masculine titles when commanding armies in the field. She switched between feminine royal ceremonies and masculine military leadership, using whichever identity best served her people's resistance to colonial invasion. The soft thunder of war drums across African plains, the gentle rustle of ceremonial and military garments, the whispered strategies where royal authority and warrior strength merged into unstoppable resistance. She served her people in all forms. The strategic brilliance. By adopting masculine military identity, she could fight alongside her warriors while maintaining feminine royal authority in diplomatic negotiations, maximizing her effectiveness in both roles. How do we serve our deepest purposes when they require us to become more than any single identity can contain? You're settling now into 18th century Versailles, where a brilliant mathematician disguised her scientific work as fashionable salon entertainment, translating Newton's Principia while maintaining her reputation as a glamorous aristocrat interested only in pleasure and romance. Emily hosted elegant parties and conducted famous love affairs while secretly working on advanced mathematics and physics. She published groundbreaking scientific translations and commentaries while maintaining the facade of a pleasure-seeking noblewoman with no serious intellectual interests. The soft scratch of equations hidden beneath love letters, the gentle rustle of silk gowns concealing scientific manuscripts, the whispered calculations shared between dances at royal balls. She found genius in disguise. The lasting contribution, her scientific work influenced Enlightenment thought, while her social life provided perfect cover for intellectual pursuits that would have been forbidden to openly scholarly women. What knowledge do we advance when we hide our deepest thinking behind the personas others expect us to perform? You're drifting now across 18th century oceans, where a woman disguised herself as a male servant to join the first French expedition around the world, becoming the first woman to circumnavigate the globe while secretly conducting botanical research. Jeanne bound her chest and served as valet to the expedition's botanist, using her position to collect specimens and document plants while maintaining masculine disguise for 3 years aboard ship and during landings on remote islands, where her true identity would have endangered the mission. The gentle lap of waves against exploration vessels, the soft rustle of pressed flowers hidden in masculine clothing, the whispered botanical observations recorded in margins of official logs. She discovered new worlds through deception. The botanical legacy. Plants she collected and documented contributed to scientific understanding of global flora, though her contributions remained hidden for centuries behind her masculine disguise. What new worlds do we discover when we're willing to become someone else entirely to pursue our deepest curiosity? You're floating now to 18th century England, where a woman adopted masculine identity so convincingly that she married multiple women across different counties, maintaining elaborate deceptions while moving from town to town as a charming gentleman. Mary created the persona of George Hamilton, a well-dressed young man with impeccable manners who courted and married women in ceremonies that appeared completely legitimate. She maintained her masculine identity through careful attention to male fashion, speech patterns, and social behavior. The soft rustle of wedding silk in country churches, the gentle clink of wedding rings exchanged in ceremonies built on performance, the whispered vows that meant everything and nothing simultaneously. She found love through elaborate fiction. The legal puzzle. When finally discovered, courts struggled to determine which laws applied to someone whose gender performance had been so convincing that official records listed her as male. What forms of love become possible when we're brave enough to challenge every assumption about who can marry whom? You're settling now into 19th century France, where a woman obtained police permits to wear masculine clothing so she could study anatomy at horse markets and slaughterhouses, becoming Europe's most celebrated animal painter while challenging every convention about feminine propriety. Rosa dressed in men's clothes to access places forbidden to women: livestock markets, veterinary schools, and dissection rooms. She studied animal anatomy with scientific precision while maintaining her artistic reputation through paintings that combined masculine access with feminine sensitivity. The soft shuffle of hooves in Paris horse markets, the gentle scratch of charcoal capturing animal movement, the whispered negotiations for police permits that allowed unprecedented feminine freedom. She found art through transgression, the official recognition. She became the first woman to receive the Legion of Honor, proving that exceptional talent could eventually transcend even the most rigid social boundaries. What masterpieces await when we're willing to wear whatever costume our art demands? You're settling into wartime Japan now, where a woman novelist hid anti-war messages and feminist ideas inside seemingly innocent love stories, becoming one of Japan's most celebrated authors while secretly challenging militaristic propaganda. Yuriko wrote romantic fiction that appeared to support traditional values while actually containing coded criticism of war and gender oppression. Censors approved her stories about dutiful wives and noble sacrifice, never recognizing the subversive messages hidden beneath conventional narrative surfaces. The soft scratch of brushes on delicate paper, the gentle rustle of manuscript pages hiding dangerous thoughts, the whispered conversations between women who recognized the truth beneath fictional romance. She found resistance through storytelling. The lasting impact: her coded critiques of war and patriarchy influenced generations of Japanese women while appearing to celebrate the very system she was undermining. What revolutions hide in the stories we tell when direct truth would silence us forever? You're drifting now to 1st century Asia Minor, where a young woman cut her hair and adopted masculine dress to preach Christianity, becoming one of the faith's most effective evangelists while maintaining her disguise to avoid persecution and social prohibition. Thecla abandoned her arranged marriage, bound her breasts, and traveled as a male apostle throughout the Roman Empire. She preached to crowds, performed baptisms, and established churches, while carefully maintaining her masculine identity through years of missionary work. The gentle echo of voices in hidden Christian gatherings, the soft rustle of traveling cloaks on dusty Roman roads, the whispered prayers where faith transcended every boundary society had constructed. She found calling through transformation, the saintly recognition. Early Christians honored her as a saint and equal to the apostles, suggesting that spiritual authority could sometimes overcome gender restrictions when disguise made it possible. How do we serve our deepest calling when answering it requires us to become someone the world refuses to recognize? You're floating now through 19th century America, where a person born into slavery adopted masculine identity and lived as a man for 4 decades, working as a farmhand and laborer while maintaining perfect gender deception throughout Reconstruction and beyond. Frances bound their chest, adopted masculine mannerisms, and worked as Frank Thompson across the Midwest, earning wages and respect impossible to achieve as a black woman in post-Civil War America. They maintained their disguise through careful attention to masculine behavior and strategic mobility. The soft thud of farm tools in prairie soil, the gentle rustle of work clothes that concealed lifelong secrets, the whispered conversations around campfires where identity became survival strategy. They found freedom through transformation. The posthumous discovery. Only after death did examination reveal Frank's biological sex, shocking employers and neighbors who had known and respected him for decades as a hard-working man. What possibilities open when we realize that identity itself might be the most powerful tool for creating the life we need to live. You're settling deeper into the Ottoman Empire, where an English noblewoman adopted Arab dress and masculine authority to become the uncrowded queen of a Lebanese mountain region, ruling local tribes while maintaining her disguise as a powerful Bedouin prince. Hester abandoned English society, donned Arab robes and headdress, and established herself as a political power in Mount Lebanon. She mediated tribal disputes, commanded loyalty from Arab chiefs, and wielded influence across the region while maintaining masculine presentation in public affairs. The soft whisper of desert robes in mountain winds, the gentle clink of coffee cups in Bedouin councils, the muffled conversations where English aristocracy transformed into Arab authority. She found power through cultural disguise. The legendary status. Local people accepted her authority so completely that some believed she possessed mystical powers, creating myths that outlasted her lifetime. What kingdoms await when we're brave enough to cross not just borders, but entire cultural identities? You're drifting now to Gilded Age New York, where a person assigned female at birth lived as a man for decades, becoming a successful politician in Tammany Hall while maintaining perfect masculine deception in one of America's most scrutinized political machines. Murray adopted masculine dress and behavior, worked as a bail bondsman, and became influential in Democratic politics while carefully maintaining his male identity through strategic friendships and political connections that protected his secret. The soft rustle of political papers in smoky back rooms, the gentle clink of whiskey glasses in Tammany meetings, the whispered deals where power mattered more than the gender of the hands that wielded it. He found success through transformation. The shocking revelation. Only a fatal illness that required medical examination revealed Murray's biological sex, stunning political colleagues who had known him as a reliable party man for 25 years. How do we measure authenticity when living as someone else allows us to become more fully ourselves than we ever could otherwise? You're floating now through 20th century Canada, where a woman poet hid socialist and feminist messages inside seemingly innocent nature poetry, becoming one of Canada's most celebrated writers while secretly challenging conservative social values. Dorothy wrote poems about landscapes and seasons that appeared politically neutral while actually containing coded critiques of capitalism and gender inequality. Her nature imagery disguised radical politics so effectively that conservative readers celebrated poetry that was actually undermining their worldview. The soft rustle of maple leaves hiding political metaphors, the gentle scratch of pens writing revolution disguised as pastoral verse, the whispered conversations where poetry became resistance through natural imagery. She found rebellion in landscapes. The literary legacy. Her work influenced Canadian literature while demonstrating how poets could challenge authority by hiding dangerous ideas inside beautiful, seemingly harmless verse. What movements begin when we disguise our most radical thoughts as the beauty others assume to be completely safe? You're settling now into ancient China, where a palace beauty volunteered for political marriage to barbarian kings, transforming herself from sheltered court lady to diplomatic agent who maintained peace between empires while adapting to completely foreign cultures. Zhou Jun left the Chinese imperial court to marry Xiongnu rulers, adopting nomadic dress, customs, and language while maintaining her role as cultural ambassador between settled and nomadic civilizations. She became a bridge between worlds while transforming her own identity. The soft whisper of silk robes replaced by leather and fur, the gentle jingle of nomadic jewelry, the muffled conversations in multiple languages where marriage became diplomacy and love became peace. She found purpose through cultural transformation. The enduring legend. Chinese and Mongol cultures both remember her as a figure who brought peace through her willingness to become someone entirely new for the sake of her people. How do we serve peace when it requires us to leave behind everything familiar and become citizens of an entirely different world? You're drifting now to modern Pakistan, where a young girl cut her hair and adopted masculine dress to play sports forbidden to women, becoming one of the world's best squash players while maintaining her disguise for years to pursue her athletic dreams. Maria bound her chest, adopted her brother's identity, and competed in male squash tournaments while carefully maintaining her masculine disguise through athletic skill and strategic behavior that convinced competitors and officials she was male. The soft thud of squash balls against court walls, the gentle rustle of athletic clothes hiding dangerous secrets, the whispered strategies where talent transcended every boundary others tried to construct. She found greatness through deception, the courageous revelation. She eventually revealed her identity and continued competing as a woman, using her story to advocate for women's rights in sports and education. What dreams do we pursue when achieving them requires us to temporarily become someone the world considers more deserving of our own aspirations. You're floating now through 1920s Paris, where an artist adopted multiple identities and personas, creating revolutionary self-portraits that questioned every assumption about gender, while living as both man and woman, depending on artistic and personal needs. Claude changed names, clothing, and gender presentation throughout their life, creating photographic self-portraits that explored masculine, feminine, and non-binary identities while maintaining fluid personal presentation that defied categorization. The soft click of camera shutters capturing identity experiments, the gentle rustle of costumes adopted and discarded, the whispered conversations where art became exploration of human possibility beyond binary categories. They found truth through multiplicity. The artistic revolution. Their work influenced surrealist movements and contemporary gender theory, proving that art could challenge society's most fundamental assumptions about human identity. What truths emerge when we use art to explore all the different people we might become if society stopped insisting we choose only one? You're settling deeper into 17th century Norway, where a woman accused of adultery escaped punishment by adopting masculine identity and working as a farmhand for 3 decades, becoming respected in her community while maintaining perfect gender deception. Britta fled her village after scandal, bound her chest, and worked as Lars throughout rural Norway, earning respect through hard work and reliability while carefully maintaining her masculine identity through strategic behavior and community integration. The soft crunch of snow under work boots, the gentle scratch of farm tools against frozen ground, the whispered conversations around winter fires where identity became survival and disguise became home. She found peace through transformation. The quiet acceptance. When her true identity was eventually discovered, many community members chose to protect rather than expose her, suggesting that belonging might matter more than the biological facts of identity. How do we build the communities we need when creating them requires us to become the people others are prepared to accept? You're settling into 17th century France now, where a bankrupt noblewoman disguised herself as a male bandit and robbed travelers on country roads for over a decade, becoming one of the era's most notorious highway robbers while maintaining perfect masculine deception. Marguerite adopted masculine dress and behavior after losing her fortune, leading a gang of robbers who never suspected their fearsome captain was actually a woman seeking to restore her family's wealth through increasingly daring roadside heists across the French countryside. The soft thunder of horse hooves on moonlit roads, the gentle clink of stolen gold in leather pouches, the whispered plans where desperation transformed into daring and nobility became banditry. She found purpose through outlawry. The dramatic capture. When finally arrested, authorities were shocked to discover that France's most wanted highway robber was actually a woman who had been living as a man for over 10 years. What transformations become necessary when the world we were born into no longer offers us any legitimate way to survive? You're drifting now to colonial Massachusetts, where a woman wrote revolutionary propaganda disguised as innocent theatrical entertainment, influencing American independence while maintaining the facade of a respectable lady interested only in dramatic arts. Mercy wrote satirical plays that mocked British officials and promoted revolutionary ideas while appearing to create harmless entertainment for colonial drawing rooms. Her comedies contained such sharp political commentary that they influenced public opinion throughout the colonies. The soft rustle of play scripts hidden among household papers, the gentle laughter at dinner parties where satire became sedition, the whispered conversations where theater masks concealed revolutionary purpose. She found rebellion through performance. The literary legacy. Her plays helped shape American political thought while allowing her to participate in revolutionary activities forbidden to women through direct political involvement. How do we change the world when we must disguise our most dangerous ideas as something others consider merely entertaining? You're floating now to medieval Japan, where an enlightened monk adopted the appearance of a homeless beggar to teach Zen Buddhism without the authority and prestige that would have prevented students from achieving true understanding. Zenny dressed in rags, begged for food, and lived as a wandering vagrant, while secretly being one of Japan's most accomplished Zen masters. He taught profound wisdom to students who had no idea they were learning from someone they would normally revere. The soft shuffle of torn sandals on temple stones, the gentle rustle of patched robes hiding perfect enlightenment, the whispered teachings where wisdom flowed from apparent poverty to concealed wealth. He found truth through humility. The beautiful paradox. His disguise as someone with nothing to offer allowed him to give students everything they needed to achieve their own enlightenment. What wisdom becomes available when we strip away every sign of authority that might prevent others from finding their own truth? You're settling deeper into Civil War battlefields, where a woman disguised herself as a male soldier and fought alongside her husband in the Union Army for over 2 years, maintaining her masculine identity while experiencing the war's most brutal campaigns. Frances bound her chest, adopted masculine mannerisms, and enlisted with her husband, fighting in multiple battles while carefully maintaining her disguise through military discipline and the chaos of war that made close scrutiny impossible. The soft rustle of blue wool uniforms hiding dangerous secrets, the gentle whisper of shared prayers before dawn battles, the muffled conversations where love and duty intertwined on fields where both might die. She found devotion through deception. The tragic revelation. Her identity was discovered only when her husband was killed in battle, and her grief overcame her ability to maintain the masculine performance that had protected them both. How do we protect what we love when keeping it safe requires us to risk everything we are? You're drifting now through 18th century Paris, where a woman philosopher wrote influential works on women's education and rights while publishing under masculine pseudonyms, advancing feminist thought while hiding behind male authority. Madeline published essays arguing for women's intellectual equality and educational rights under various male pen names, allowing her radical ideas to be taken seriously by readers who would have dismissed identical arguments coming from a female author. The gentle scratch of revolutionary ideas disguised as masculine authority, the soft rustle of manuscripts that challenged society while hiding their author's gender, the whispered conversations where truth traveled behind false names. She found voice through anonymity. The intellectual courage. She risked everything to argue for women's rights at a time when such advocacy could destroy both reputation and livelihood, proving her points by the very disguise she needed to make them. What truths do we advance when sharing them honestly would immediately discredit everything we're trying to prove? You're floating now through Imperial China's final years, where a Manchu princess served as lady-in-waiting to Empress Dowager Cixi while secretly gathering intelligence for foreign powers, using her privileged position to access state secrets. Derling appeared to be a loyal court attendant serving the empress while actually documenting palace politics and imperial decisions for various foreign governments, using her intimate access to gather intelligence that influenced international relations. The soft whisper of silk slippers in forbidden city corridors, the gentle rustle of court robes hiding treasonous purposes, the muffled conversations where loyalty became performance and service became espionage. She served multiple masters simultaneously. The complex legacy. Her memoirs provided invaluable insights into the Qing court's final years, while raising questions about loyalty, identity, and survival in a collapsing empire. How do we navigate between competing loyalties when survival requires us to serve masters whose interests fundamentally conflict? You're settling now into 20th century America, where a talented pianist and saxophonist lived as a man for 5 decades, marrying women and raising children while maintaining perfect masculine deception throughout a successful jazz career. Billy performed in dance bands and jazz ensembles across the Pacific Northwest, married multiple times, and adopted children while carefully maintaining his masculine identity through strategic behavior and the understanding that music mattered more than the musician's biology. The soft notes of saxophone melodies floating through smoky clubs, the gentle rustle of stage costumes that concealed lifelong secrets, the whispered conversations where talent transcended every boundary others tried to construct. He found authenticity through performance. The posthumous revelation. Only after death did medical examination reveal Billy's biological sex, shocking family members and fellow musicians who had known him as husband, father, and bandmate for decades. What music emerges when we live so authentically in our chosen identity that even those closest to us never question the truth of who we've become? You're drifting now through the American West, where a Native American woman adopted various cultural disguises to serve as interpreter and advocate between her people and encroaching settlers, transforming herself as needed to protect Paiute survival. Sarah moved fluidly between Native and white identities, sometimes dressing as a proper Victorian lady to lecture Eastern audiences about Indian rights, sometimes adopting frontier appearance to guide military expeditions through Paiute territory. The soft rustle of changing costumes between cultural performances, the gentle rhythm of languages shifting to match different audiences, the whispered translations where survival depended on perfect cultural fluency. She found advocacy through adaptation. The bridge-building legacy. Her ability to inhabit multiple identities allowed her to advocate for her people while building understanding between cultures that seemed destined for conflict. How do we protect our people when serving them requires us to master the languages and customs of those who threaten everything we hold sacred? You're floating now across medieval waters, where a French noblewoman whose husband was executed by the king transformed herself into a pirate captain, spending years hunting French ships while maintaining her disguise as a male corsair seeking revenge. Jean adopted masculine naval dress and commanded a fleet of ships painted black with red sails, pursuing French vessels across the English Channel while maintaining her identity as a fearsome male pirate captain known for personally executing captured French nobles. The soft snap of black sails against stormy skies, the gentle splash of oars cutting through dark waters, the whispered prayers for vengeance where grief transformed into purpose and love became warfare. She found justice through piracy. The legendary status. Sailors throughout the Channel feared the mysterious captain who hunted French ships with supernatural determination, never suspecting their nemesis was a widow seeking justice for her husband's death. What justice do we create when the courts fail us, and we must become our own instruments of retribution? You're resting now in ancient China, where a woman disguised herself as a male Taoist master and founded one of China's most influential religious movements, establishing temples and training disciples while maintaining perfect masculine deception for decades. Wei adopted masculine dress and deportment to establish the Shangqing school of Taoism, writing sacred texts and ordaining priests, while carefully maintaining her disguise as an enlightened male master whose spiritual authority could not be questioned by patriarchal religious hierarchy. The gentle whisper of sacred texts being written by hidden hands, the soft rustle of ceremonial robes concealing revolutionary truth, the muffled chants where divine wisdom flowed through human vessels regardless of the body that contained them. She found the eternal through the temporal. The spiritual legacy. Her religious innovations influenced Chinese spirituality for centuries, proving that divine truth recognizes no earthly boundaries about who may serve as its vessel. What sacred wisdom emerges when we realize that the divine speaks through whatever form allows its voice to be heard. And so our journey through 100 hidden lives comes to its gentle close. From ancient temples to modern stages, from battlefield trenches to palace corridors, we've witnessed the remarkable human capacity to become whoever we need to be. Each disguise was a doorway to survival, to service, to love, to truth itself. These 100 souls remind us that identity is perhaps humanity's most creative art form. They show us that courage often wears the mask of necessity, that love frequently requires us to become unrecognizable to ourselves, and that the greatest truths sometimes emerge only when we're brave enough to hide behind beautiful lies. Sweet dreams, friends. May you wake tomorrow a little more curious about the stories hiding behind every face you meet, and a little more compassionate toward everyone still searching for the courage to remove their masks.